This opening card that we have on the table today is quite telling to this transformation process that we've all been going through since around 2008. And that may sound kind of profound, but it's true. We have the opening card today of the Judgment Card. Now, this card is signaling the energies of Pluto and a deep transformation process that's bringing a new light to our life and our experiences. And in a lot of ways, we are being reborn out of the experiences that we've known and that we've claimed to identify our being in this life, and we're starting to see something outside of that box, so to speak, that we've been existing in. We see these three figures that are coming out of what looks like coffins, a very dark, confined area, and they're being called out of this darkness from this angelic presence that's playing the trumpet. And so a lot of us are quite literally being called to our next chapter. We're experiencing our higher calling or our true calling, and something is rattling our cage. And it's time to get out of that cage. Now, when we touch on what's going on astrologically, it's kind of interesting, right? Because the Judgment Card is pointing to the planet of Pluto, that deep transformation process. And as I just mentioned, we've had Pluto in Capricorn since 2008. Now consider that Pluto has the longest transit or orbit around the sun by way of our star system. So it has this long in time influence. It's considered a generational influence because it can impact a whole generation based on the sign that it sits in, and that it typically sits in for anywhere up to around 20 years because it has the longest orbit, as I had mentioned, around the sun, right? It's the farthest reaching planet. What's so interesting about that is that it's in the sign of Capricorn. And right now we have a number of planets that are in the sign of Capricorn. The sun just went into Capricorn on the 22nd of December. Then we also have Mercury and Venus also in Capricorn. So when we look over here, right, we have the sun and the moon. The moon was just a new moon yesterday, also in Capricorn, but it's a really fast moving celestial body, so it's ticking along. We have the sun, the moon, Venus really close to the moon, Mercury really close to Venus, and then Pluto all over in Capricorn. Now, keep in mind that we've been going through a lot of big transformations, particularly in the last 3 years. They've been quite poignant. And part of that is because in January of 2020, we had a couple of other additional celestial bodies in the sign of Capricorn. We had Jupiter, we had Saturn, both in the sign of Capricorn. And those are intense energies to add to this space. It's as if Jupiter is expanding the process of transformation and Saturn is restricting at the same time. So there's this friction, there's this challenge in a lot of ways for us to transform. And I don't think anyone can say honestly, if they look back at the last 3 years, that it hasn't called something in you to the surface that you have kind of been keeping right beyond your point of view or your perspective, something that you didn't acknowledge in yourself and really put on the table. Well, that seed is growing and has been growing, and there is this aspect of yourself that has been called forth from this process, which is pretty cool when you consider that the universe is conspiring for us to actually become better versions of ourselves. Now, the challenge that we are working with today is this 9 of Swords energy, which is an intense energy, right? We see this person who looks like they've been up all night long. There's this full moon in the background and these swords that are likely keeping them awake. It is a card that tells of like this imprisoning nature of the mind and how where we fixate our thoughts, can really be debilitating and can be paralyzing in a lot of ways. Now, it's a number 9, so to consider what that means is that we are in a place of completion around something. We've seen something and we have, taken a bite of that bitter truth, right? And in a lot of ways, being able to see that has given us perspective as to how important it is that we make disciplined changes and shifts in our lives. Because I ask people to consider, like, instead of seeing something that didn't work out right and having that be something that brings you sorrow or sadness or heaviness, can it bring you some kind of fire instead? Because the mind and the emotions and our will and our ability to actually put ourselves toward practical efforts are all speaking to these tools that we have to work with. But if we find ourselves in a lot of ways paralyzed by the mind, then we aren't actually applying our effort toward that which we want to move toward in life. So I encourage you to consider that what you're seeing by way of, the hard truth of a situation actually is the first step to creating something new. Because when we're in denial, that's where we can really, clip our own wings. Now, how do we move through this challenge? We have a few interesting transits that are coming onto the table by way of the cards that are about to show up. So one of them is the Temperance card. Now, this is associated with the energy of Sagittarius and also the planet of Jupiter. Now, Jupiter just moved into Aries. So in a lot of ways, we are feeling this expansion to our sense of self and where we feel our sense of will and what we want to engage in the world. Now, it's also asking us to really hold on to a bigger picture than the picture that we experience when we're in this realm of the mind, right? Like, the realm of possibilities is a lot more vast and holds a lot more potential than the certainty that we give weight to by way of the mind. And so it's asking us to really sit down and look to the future and what we want to put our energy and effort toward, and consider that yesterday we had a new moon, right? Right now, the moon is around 15 degrees of Capricorn. It's just a couple of degrees away from Venus, and it's moving very fast. So it's starting to wax, right? When you look up to the sky, you likely won't see the moon tonight because it's still in that dark phase. You might see the tiniest sliver, but I think it's too close to the sun to see that. You won't likely see the moon until it really moves more into like Aquarius, is when you'll see it actually gain in light and wax, so to speak. So this time of planting these seeds and planting our intentions of what we want to build towards in the coming year is really important right now, more so than New Year's Day, because of the energies that are happening right now in the astrological sky. And consider that you're planting that wish in the space of the moon, and it is passing through, the gauntlet or the windows or the doorways of Venus. It's then going to pass through Mercury, and then it's going to pass through Pluto. So these are energies that can lend some additional force to what you are trying to actualize this coming year. And when we look at this card, we can see that the figure in the card is actually looking out to the horizon to see what it would take to create form out of something that just might be the spark of an idea. Now, the ultimate outcome that we had for today came in as 3 cards. We have a combination of the Queen of Wands, which is associated with Aries energy, which I just mentioned Jupiter has moved into. Then we also have the Five of Pentacles and the Justice card. Now, the Five of Pentacles gives us an interesting energy to consider in the reading today, because Chiron is another aspect that we should consider. Chiron has been in retrograde in Aries, and it just moved out of retrograde. So many of us may have been looking over aspects of ourselves that had some kind of wound to it. Aspects of our own sense of self that we had some wound around, because Chiron has been in the sign of Aries and has been in this retrograde reviewing process. And now it's getting ready to move forward. And Jupiter just moved into Aries and will be passing over that placement in our astrological skyscape, in a lot of ways bringing help to that wounded aspect of ourself and a new, bigger understanding. So it's pretty profound to me to see the cards that landed on the table today, because it is really asking us what it would take to follow through with that big dream you've held on to. And can you hold in your consideration everything that lends more energy and information to that which you want to build in the coming year? Because we have one of the ultimate outcome cards showing up is the Justice card, which is someone who weighs everything carefully before they make a decision, to move towards something. And so with the cards that are on the table today and the time of year that we're all sitting in, it lends a framework of review around that which we have put our energy toward, which may or may not have worked out, and how we can kind of mentally torture ourselves in that way. But I think what the energy is asking us to consider is that perhaps some things didn't work out because it wants us to put our energy towards something very purposeful. And considering that we all are in this time of awakening and rebirthing out of this place that we've been navigating over the last 3 years, I encourage you to be gentle and compassionate with yourself. And also with others, because we are all in process of becoming. And so I ask you to put your energy and effort toward that which helps you shine your light in the world, because we all need it. I send you all so much love and a wonderful holiday wherever you are. And I hope that you take some time to sit with yourself and map out things that you want to explore and grow in yourself this coming year. Now, when we look at the sky, right, as I had mentioned before, we have this grouping of planets over here in Capricorn. Now, when this sun reaches zenith, they're all going to be up in the sky. It's really interesting that all of the planets fall on one side of the zodiac wheel, because it lends this energy of us like holding something that we want to then send out into the world, considering particularly that Mars is in retrograde right now over in Gemini, which is where we speak and communicate and engage with people. And that energy of Mars has been kind of in a place of review around how we do that. Now, when the sun sets tonight, the two planets that you are going to most likely be able to see, depending, of course, on your weather, because where I am, we've had a lot of clouds over the last few days, at least in the state of Colorado. Up here, it's pretty clear at night, so I've been able to see both the planet of Jupiter, which I had just mentioned, is moving over into Aries. It's at 0 degrees of Aries today. And when the sun sets, it's going to be just beyond zenith position in the sky, depending on where you are in the world. It's going to be right in that area up here. And then Mars will have already come up upon this horizon, but you'll also be able to see that. So if you look up to the sky and you see these two bright planetary objects and you're like, well, am I seeing Jupiter or am I seeing Mars? Consider how soon the sun has gone down, because Jupiter will follow it, and then Mars will be the only planet you'll be able to see in the sky up around, midnight or so, because Jupiter will have already gone beyond the horizon. I send you all so much love, and I hope you are well. I'll see you again in about a week's time. Sending so much love to you. Bye for now.